When enough finally meant leaving. I didn't leave suddenly. People like to believe that leaving always comes after something loud, a fight, a betrayal, a moment so clear it demands escape. That wasn't my story. I stayed because staying felt simpler than explaining at first. When we met, he already had a life, children, habits, a rhythm that worked for him. He didn't ask me to fit into it, not directly. He just kept moving as if I would naturally fall into place. And I did. In the beginning, it felt like maturity. Quiet evenings, predictable weekends, no chaos. I told myself this was what stability looked like. But stability can be a cage if it never shifts. I adjusted first. My schedule, my needs, my expectations. It didn't feel like sacrifice then. It felt like compromise. I learned where I was allowed to exist, which rooms felt crowded when I entered, which moods required silence. I learned to speak carefully to avoid irritation. I learned not to ask questions that slowed the day. Patience became my language. Whenever I felt restless, he reminded me that this was adulthood, that comfort mattered more than dreams, that wanting more meant I was ungrateful. So I stayed quiet. Time blurred. Days repeated themselves without resistance. I cooked, cleaned, helped, waited. I became useful, reliable, invisible. The children saw me as furniture, always there, rarely acknowledged. He saw me as support, someone who made his life run smoothly. And I told myself, love doesn't need to be exciting, love just needs endurance. Money shifted the balance, slowly. At first, it was framed as fairness, then responsibility, then expectation. Even as my health slipped, even as my world shrank, I told myself relationships require tolerance. I tolerated the fatigue, the quiet resentment, the way my reflection felt unfamiliar. The breaking point was not an argument, it was a morning. I woke up and realized I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just absence. I stood in the kitchen watching sunlight touch a space that was never mine, and understood, if I stayed, this version of me would disappear completely. Leaving wasn't brave, it was necessary. I packed slowly, not out of fear, but because I had already left emotionally. I didn't explain, I didn't defend, I didn't ask for permission. He didn't stop me, not really. He looked surprised, as if usefulness had mistakenly grown a spine. The days after leaving were not peaceful. They were empty. Silence echoed. Doubt whispered. I wondered if I had exaggerated, if endurance had simply run out. Then sleep returned, then appetite, then movement. Distance brought clarity. Messages arrived. Regret, blame, confusion. Promises appeared where patience once lived. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because my voice was finally mine again. Time continued, and I rebuilt, slowly, deliberately, with space for uncertainty. I learned something simple. Patience is not infinite. It is a resource, and when it is spent, leaving is not failure. It is survival. I didn't leave to punish. I left to live. Enough doesn't arrive loudly. It appears when nothing else is left to give.
Enough. I bought the house for the quiet, the yard, the trees, the space between neighbors. It felt like a place where nothing was supposed to happen. At first, it was small. Tire marks across the edge of my lawn. A shortcut that wasn't mine to give. I told myself it wasn't worth reacting to. Grass grows back. Then it happened again. And again. Each time the path widened, the soil packed down, like permission had been granted. I spoke up, politely. He nodded, said it wouldn't happen again. It did. I spoke again, less politely. Nothing changed. That was when patience became something I had to practice. The shortcut stopped after authorities stepped in. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. One morning, my camera showed movement where there shouldn't have been any. A heavy shape dragged across my land, left behind, discarded. A broken television, abandoned where trees begin. Not even hidden, just placed, as if my property had become an extension of convenience. I didn't confront. I documented. Images, timestamps, footage. I handed it over and waited. The response wasn't immediate, but it was firm. Orders, deadlines, consequences. That was when the note arrived. Carefully written, carefully threatening. Complaints about leaves, about branches, about inconvenience, as if debris from a tree was equal to trespass. I read the note once, then again, and realized this wasn't confusion. It was retaliation. I didn't respond. I checked the rules. I spoke only to people whose job was clarity, and every answer said the same thing. I was responsible for nothing. Days passed. No lawsuit, no follow-up, just silence. The television disappeared. Not with an apology, not with acknowledgement, just gone. I confirmed the boundary. Official. Final. No more shortcuts, no more access. Time did something I didn't expect. It gave me peace. Not relief, peace. I stopped checking the cameras, stopped listening for engines, stopped waiting for the next escalation. Later, I made one more call, not to complain, but to report concern. Because some situations aren't just about conflict, they're about decline, and being ignored by the wrong people. I don't know what happened after. I wasn't meant to. What I know is this. My land is quiet again. My yard is healing, and the weight I carried for years is gone. Enough isn't anger. It isn't revenge. It's the moment you stop explaining and let boundaries do the talking. I didn't fight. I didn't escalate. I waited until enough was finally enough.